Welcome to Sorry I'm a Bitch, the podcast for anyone who's ever been called a bitch. Hosted by Kaylee Ellis and produced by me, Hannah Laree.
Hello, welcome. We have Mags and Skittzi joining us today. And I would like to know, how did you guys meet?
The short version is the internet, but then depending upon like how well maybe we know you or how well we think you know the internet, I stream on Twitch and also I'm a content creator on, YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and all that sort of stuff. And through a friend introducing Mags to a video game that I was streaming, they ended up in my community and, just kind of got to know each other over, like a year and a half long period of time, I think. Was very much the crushing on each other but not wanting to admit it. But it was, just a natural evolution of us genuinely becoming friends and talking to each other, crushing very hard.
Yeah. The algorithm did its job.
Yeah, basically the algorithm did its job.
Very much.
Yeah, Mags was hanging out in my community for a bit and then the algorithm decided, here's a video of her. Wouldn't you like to see that? And I said, wow, she's very cute. Chatting for a while and then just kind of had are we being flirty or are we flirting with each other conversation.
Meanwhile, that was happening while you were at a bachelorette party and I was performing at a drag show.
Both of us glued to our phones.
Everyone's like, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? Why are you smiling so much? We kept talking and I had let her know that, I'm moving cross country. I know you're in the general region where I'm going to be. Maybe we'll meet up sometime at a Ren fair or whatever. We went on a couple virtual dates and then I was apartment hunting in the area where I moved to. I mean, I'm going to be in the general region. Do you want to go on an in-person date aside from just our virtual dates? And it worked out perfect. Everyone's going to be like, oh, you hauled him. 2 full years later, we eloped.
I had a lot of people teasing me for you met online, you're going very fast. But also, I had been in several years-long relationships before my relationship with Mags. And I was at a point in my life where I was like, I know what I want. I'm not messing around anymore. So why pretend? There's this kind of, I think, societal norm of you have to be dating for X number of months or years before you do such and such. And it's why? Kind of. Even in my head when Mags was moving, I was like, okay, so we'll do, a medium distance, quote unquote, and, visit each other on the weekends and everything. And maybe she'll live in her apartment for 2 or 3 years. And then we'll talk about moving in. And 2 or 3 months, I think, into you living in your apartment, I was like, we have to move in together. For me, I identify as bisexual / queer. Sometimes I use those a little interchangeably, but until my relationship with Mags, I was in relationships with cis men. And my last relationship before Mags was kind of when I came out to myself, realized I struggle to really put the label on it because it's not I became, it's I really got in touch with myself and was this is a truth about you. This is real. And I think there's some, the bisexual stereotype of oh yeah, you're bisexual, but you just are in relationships with gamer boys, golden retriever gamer boys, and that's it. And, it can be hard to be doing the heteronormative thing and realize your queerness kind of midway through that and be okay, what do I do now? Like, what, like, how do I, reconcile with this while being in a relationship that ended up ending, but then, moving forward after that? That, cliche of like, oh, he won't let me wear my hair this way. And it's like, what do you mean? That's like kind of true. I used to have long hair and like wear my makeup a certain way. And one of the factors that my ex admitted to me in his eventual decision to break up with me, like we broke up with each other, but it was really kind of something that he had started, was that like, oh, I cut my hair short and I started like wearing more fun, like sparkly makeup, and he wasn't into that. And I was like, oh, well, I'm into that. Like, that's who I am. So like, well, I'm not going to not do that because of you.
So for most of my life, until I was 23, I'm in my 30s now. Until I was 23, I thought I was straight. I thought I was going to be a youth pastor, everything. I was raised private school, super religious, everything. Wore a lot of makeup, high heels, the whole bit. And now I'm like, give me Dickies and a t-shirt or a button down. I'm happy.
I feel like you look like you now.
That's what a lot of people say. They're like, you look younger, you look happier. Not only that, people are like, oh, well, how do you identify? I'm like, I mean, you can say I'm gay, you can say I'm queer, you can say I'm lesbian, whatever. I personally am more gender queer than anything, but it's not something I advertise a lot, just because professional settings, it can get weird. Socially, it can get weird. It brings up a lot of questions, and I'm like, unless you're ready for that conversation, and especially when people hear that, sometimes they're like, oh, well, so like, how open are you with stuff? I am a person who has a capacity to love one other person at a time. I applaud many of my friends who are open or poly or anything of that nature. It is simply not in me. It wasn't even too much of a question. It was just okay, how do I navigate this now that I know who I am? And then having like that second realization of, oh, you're not necessarily like 100% a woman. I feel like culturally I was raised as a woman, but I'm just here. I'm just me. That's all that mattered.
Do you think how an individual identifies shapes how they view commitment? Because I know you just said that, some of your friends will be like, have you tried being open?
Yeah, I honestly don't think so, because I think it's very much so like a case-by-case basis. Only because I've been roommates with several trans women, and several of them, like, they were monogamous, and everyone's like, what? But they were also in lesbian relationships, and everyone's like, what? How did it? And I'm like, well, again, if you don't open your mind a little bit, and if you don't know someone who is gender nonconforming, open your mind a little bit, ask respectful, curious questions, and make sure that they're okay with it. So, like, sometimes you can be aromantic. It's like, okay, do you want to have a sexual relationship with someone or just a romantic relationship with someone? There's so much that I think many people don't realize is out there on the spectrum, and I think a lot of it's just because it's not talked about. There is a hilarious, like, stereotype. There's a stereotype for a reason. There's a stereotype for everything for a reason. But amongst Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop groups where, like, it's all just one giant polycule, not necessarily true, but I happen to be in a Dungeons and Dragons group where most of my friends are in an international polycule.
I mean, if we're talking about stereotypes, let's talk about the biggest one. How do you guys feel about the U-Haul lesbian trope?
I get it. I get it as, again, a bisexual woman who is coming from the world of, heteronormativity of I'm just dating men and this is what I'm into, and then finally having a queer relationship, I think for many people is really uplifting for them because they feel seen by another person who's on the same wavelength as them. And a lot of times that comes across as the like, oh my God, we have to get married. Like, I've never clicked with somebody in this way before. When you find somebody who you click with in that way, I get it. I get the inclination to be like, oh my God, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. When I met Mags and we did start, being more romantic with each other and flirting and being like, okay, we're going to, turn this into a relationship and not just, sort of a casual friendship. I think there was that element of feeling seen and feeling recognized in the relationship and the excitement that comes along with that. Like, oh, I want to learn more about this person in turn. But the more we, talked and spent time together, and after we met each other in person, I was like already convinced before we met each other in person. I was like, this is gonna be like, if not the love of my life, like a very crucial relationship for me. I just had that feeling right away. So I understand the U-Haul lesbian trope. However, I will say, like, resist the urge, like date each other and be open and honest with each other about things, because I understand the temptation, but at the same time, like you with any relationship, like you do want to be smart, you do want to be sure that you're aligned on things, and having conversations about where you're at in your life and what you want to do with your life and whether or not your goals align with that and you can actually, potentially have a life together.
Meanwhile, I hate it only because I think there's so many stereotypes with individual groups within the queer community. They can initially be harmful. And for folks who are just coming out or just trying to explore their sexuality, they fall into those traps of the stereotypes because that's all they've seen, that's all they've known, that's all they've heard about. And even if it's in a joking fashion, it can be very damaging.
We've said that, like, oh, I wish I met you sooner. Like, I wish I knew you sooner just because of the connection that we have. But at the same time, we kind of came into each other's lives at the correct time. Like, we were both in that self-reflection stage. And even as somebody who is a cisgendered woman, like, I am now much more secure in my gender identity than I was when I was a kid. I was not like other girls, like, was bullied and didn't get along with other women. And I was like, that's internalized something. But yeah, having that space to sort of figure yourself out, whatever that means, like whatever is going on in your life, I think is really helpful. So for the two of us, we aligned in that sense.
If you like what you're hearing so far, give us a follow. We are a brand new podcast and we do everything ourselves, so your support quite literally keeps us going. And don't forget to tune in next Tuesday, right here on Sorry I'm a Bitch.